I'm really going to take off from the presentation that Santosh made. I am essentially going to talk about what some of the buzzwords that he showcased in slide 3 of his presentation. And as you can see, I've already memorized his presentation in preparation for the IndiaSocial Summit 2013. He talked about co-creating, he talked about ceding control. The slide mentioned dialogues rather than brand monologues, so on and so forth. So what I'm going to take you through over the next 20 odd minutes is these buzzwords in action. Let me set the ground for the presentation. He talked about this whole social media and brand involvement in social media as something akin to a student in class 7. I must warn you, or I must confess that we are in class 1, so that makes us even smaller. And I'm incidentally going to be justifying the budgets I've asked for the coming financial year in a few days from now. So I'm going to quote Santosh Desai and tell my CFO that we're in class 1, so please don't ask me for any ROI. Hopefully he'll buy that. Secondly, we're just beginning. We don't have some of the mind-boggling numbers that we saw Facebook talk about. 50 million users in India, 500 million logging in every day, so on and so forth. We probably will get there sooner rather than later, but as of now, some of the numbers that I throw at you during the course of the next 20 minutes or so are really, really going to be minuscule. So what am I going to talk about today? I'm going to talk about 4 broad topics. I'm going to talk about movement marketing, a fancy word for word of mouth, or what existed in society hundreds of years back before television, radio, and some of the mass media tools that exist today. I'm going to talk about the idea of RISE, on which we at Mahindra are building our brand's position. I'm going to talk about a program called Spark the Rise, which really is our idea put to practical use. And lastly, I'm going to talk about a thinking framework as to how we took the program Spark the Rise to people out there with the hope that we'd be creating a movement. So these are 4 broad themes that I'll cover during the course of next 15 or 20 odd minutes. Starting off with movement marketing, we've already heard Santosh allude to it. So also Eric. It's a no-brainer. In traditional marketing, we typically shout at people until they listen to us. It's a monologue, broadly speaking. Companies advertise, shout from the rooftops, in the hope that people hear, people pay attention, and hopefully go on to form a relationship with the brand. Movements are slightly different. We are talking about things that are out there. Religion was probably the world's first movement. Closer to our times, you had the Indian freedom movement, where people took an idea and rallied or galvanized themselves around that idea. More recently, you had the movement in West Asia, the democracy movement, and all these are examples of movements that shape or rather reshape societies. Closer to business, you had, again, Santosh talked about the open source movement, where ideas are becoming more and more democratic. They don't belong to any particular individual or organization. We have the fitness movement, or there's an athlete inside me movement, which some brands have tapped into. The health movement, I remember an edible oil brand that tapped into cardiac healthcare more than 20 years back, so on and so forth. So there are specific ideas or so-called rallying points out there in society that are already engaging people, and what brands can do is become a part of that inner circle. Brands, in most cases, do not start movements. They join movements. They become part of a movement. No brand can lay claim to actually starting the fitness movement. They probably accelerated it by being a part of the movement rather than actually starting that movement. And in several cases, the movements are started by passionate people who are united around a cause. So I don't know if this ever became a movement. And they aim to do nothing less than change the world. We've seen it in some of the examples I gave: religion, democracy, freedom, etc., etc. These movements have shaped or reshaped society in ways that people could not really imagine. So in almost all cases, the world as we know it will cease to exist if a particular movement is successful. Just ask the fallen dictators of West Asia. It's always important to remember a movement is bigger than a company. Like I said, no company or no brand can lay claim to actually having kick-started a movement. Movements are already out there, sometimes in a dormant form, sometimes in a hyperactive form. All we can do is ride the wave. And if we are good at surfing or riding the wave, we will ride the wave rather than fall and actually end up drinking some water. More pertinently, movements embody the spirit of the time. They in several cases represent an idea whose time has come, an idea that is ripe for the plucking. And like I said before, a brand will do well to tap into the movement. So what is the RISE movement that I'm going to talk about? And more specifically, what is Park the Rise? Before we get into the core theme of my presentation, which is how we use social media to participate in a movement that I'm just going to define for you. When we were researching certain brand ideas in December 2008, January 2009, we must remember that this was probably bang in the middle of the worst ever depression since the late 20s, early 30s. We found that people everywhere were very, very optimistic. People wanted to shape their own futures. They were very optimistic of their ability to empower themselves and create a better future for themselves, for their communities, and for the world at large. They were beginning to lose trust or faith in governments, in large institutions, because of all that was happening around them. And they said, we've got to help ourselves. We need platforms. We need a little egging on. And as individuals or as communities, we can create a better future. So we think people will succeed if given an opportunity. People want to rise. They want to rise to challenges. They want to rise to opportunities. They want to rise to a better future. And we think that if we become a part of this movement of self-empowerment, we can create or improve engagement with our brand. So the idea of RISE is built on the foundation of hope, optimism of a better world, a better future, a more prosperous future, tenacity, perseverance, and newer ways of thinking or innovation. This idea does not belong to the Mahindra brand. It belongs to the people out there. All we are doing is, like I said, riding on this idea, becoming members of the community or a set of people that subscribe to this idea, a set of optimistic, hopeful, tenacious individuals or groups. And hopefully, we want to build a connection with them, and we want them to build a connection with a brand that empowers them to rise to their challenges, rise to their ambitions, rise to their prosperity. And through various programs, we want to build a common goal or drive a common goal of prosperity and optimism, beginning with the Mahindra Group itself. We're doing a lot of work internally to drive the brand and the brand values or the philosophy that the brand stands for within the Mahindra Group, although that is not the topic of today's presentation. And there too, social media is being used rather extensively. But then again, like I said, the caveat is we are in class 1. When we articulated RISE sometime in January 2011, or the idea of RISE, we realized that if it remained a slogan on the wall, I'll again go back to Santosh to prove that I memorized his presentation. He talked about fancy looking or fancy worded mission statements on the wall. We realized that if that was what RISE became, it would end up feeling a little cheesy. It would stand for everything, but would mean nothing to most people. We had to bring it alive. One way of doing it was to shout at people, right, using mass media, which we did. We did some amount of shouting, but before our voices became really hoarse, we realized that we had to do something, give the idea, the philosophy of RISE a touch and feel, enable people to experience the power of the idea rather than preaching to them about what the idea was all about. So this idea will come alive when we empower people to drive their own RISE. And we saw our role as telling stories of people who embrace or live this philosophy, spreading the word, and making the idea more and more infectious so that more and more people buy into the idea, engage with the idea, and do something about their own lives. So we wanted to create ripples in a pond. That was the idea of RISE. So that was what we set out to do as part of our efforts to engage with the community. So that was how the idea of Spark the Rise was born. We're probably not the first brand to come up with an idea like this, but one thing I can assure you is we probably be the most persistent brand. We see this as the flagship brand building program for the Mahindra Group. We're in it for the long term. We really do not have a defined end date for this program. And as you will see, we want to cede control of this program down the line. So we do not want to be the 800-pound gorilla sitting in the room. Spark the Rise must be an entity that has a life of its own. At its core, it's a very simple concept. It is a platform, digital today, probably will go offline tomorrow as well. A platform where sparks or people who have good intentions, who are passionate about driving change or making an impact on other people's lives, come together, showcase their projects, and more importantly, where other people rally around these projects and help, in the process, help people rise. So it is not a typical business plan competition where we invite entries, get a certain number of entries, put them in front of a jury, basically make them pitch, and then come up with a reward at the end of the program. It's not such a program. It is hopefully an experience, one that will assume a life of its own with time. So that really sets the context of the main topic of my presentation today, which is the role of social media. What I'm going to do is talk to you about how we use social media through a thinking framework which we use internally, which we think underpins most movements, right? This, again, is not our idea. We did not invent it. We went outside, observed, and probably just put a structure to what people who were all participating in movements were already doing, right? When we set up Spark the Rise, like I said, which is a platform where people can submit ideas in 5 categories connected with helping India rise. We are going to take this global, and wherever we go, we're going to talk about this platform helping that society or that community or that country progress, develop, rise, etc., etc. So we had categories, we have categories like energy, technology, social entrepreneurship, rural development and agriculture, so on and so forth. Even when the program was being conceptualized, we used social media. We did a lot of listening in. We spent about a month or 2 months listening into about 12 months of conversation, both in the online space and in the offline media, about what were the themes that people typically alluded to when it came to India becoming a superpower, India progressing, India development, etc., etc. So the categories we came up with are no-brainers, actually. But how we use social media in this endeavor was to get behind the emotions behind which people were talking about, let's say, rural development, health, education, etc., etc. And these really informed our social media communication strategy rather than, just come up with these themes, which really are no-brainers. Anybody wanting or talking about India and India's progress, or for that matter, any economy's progress, will typically talk about technology, innovation, so on and so forth. So that was how we started with technology, and we realized that if we had to make this platform succeed, the ideas or the people with the ideas were the key. Good ideas typically tend to act as very, very powerful magnets. Probably the most powerful magnets on earth are good ideas, ideas worth engaging with, ideas worth spreading, so on and so forth. So we segmented our universe using the level of involvement, and we said we've got to, first of all, get or attract people with the ideas, people who want to make a difference, people who are passionate. We then talked about volunteers, and then there was the voting component as well, which I'll come to in a short while, and lastly, the general public. So that is where we went to find people with ideas. We went to colleges, we went to startups, we went to private labs, so on and so forth. And all this essentially underscores the fact that you cannot view social media in isolation. I've been to a lot of summits, a lot of conferences where there's a lot of hype surrounding social media, where people think that it's a be-all, end-all. All that a brand has to do is create a page on Facebook, open a Twitter account, and set up a YouTube channel, and bingo, the world's going to flock to that brand. No, it's a lot of hard work, just like social media is today's, or rather yesterday's word of mouth, right? The power that it enjoys is it removes limitations of time and space to a large extent. So there's a lot of offline or non-digital component of building a digital presence that is worthy of mention. So we did a lot of on-ground, real-time, in-your-face kind of work prior to even attempting to do something in the social or the digital space. So that's probably one takeaway which I'd like to share. Remember, this is coming from a class 1 student. So what we wanted to do through this platform was to essentially enable people. I talked about the 4 segments. So we wanted people in each of these segments or circles, so to speak, to reach out to others, build connections, facilitate discussions around meaningful topics or positive change, whether it's at an individual level or a community or a societal level or at the national level. And over time, we want, like I told you at the beginning, we want to transfer ownership of this platform to the people, to the public out there. I don't know how we'll do it. So if that's a question that's going to be asked, I'm preempting it. I don't know the answer. But we will find out how we will be doing it with time. Like I said, we are in it for the long haul. This is not a one-stop tactical brand building initiative. But the ultimate objective is to transfer this platform to the public. I talked about a thinking framework that we used around our whole efforts to take this program out to the world out there. You've got to engage people. You want to engage people around the idea of RISE. Spark the RISE is a tool to help people engage with that idea. So improving or increasing engagement, it was obviously the core of whatever we set out to do. And to do that, we had to have or seek assistance from 5 other E's. I'll go through each one of these very quickly, with the first E being ease. It's a real no-brainer, and this is where social media comes in. It makes joining and participating easy. You do something offline, let's say a business plan competition where you invite offline entries. Think of a world where digital did not exist, right? So you had people writing lengthy business plans on reams and reams of paper, sending it to you. Again, there's a time lag there. You spend some time scrutinizing. You come up with, you announce your results, most probably through an advertisement in a newspaper or something. It makes life tough. Not impossible, but tough. So joining and participating in programs of these kind involves some amount of effort. If it's a digital platform, it's pretty simple. There's an online, there's a site where you can log on. You can register. There's a format. All you do is probably cut paste your already existing program, and bingo, you're already a part of that community. And like I said, participation must be easy. This is not a program just for people with the ideas, just as it is an important platform for people who are passionate about an idea but do not have the wherewithal to actually pursue that idea or scale it up. So if I'm passionate about renewable energy, and let's say I'm a retired professor, and I find out through this platform of an entrepreneur who's trying to do something in my community, or let's say installing solar rooftop panels, I can participate in the program by joining hands with him. I can donate money, I can donate equipment, or I can just volunteer. So we made or democratized participation. Second E is you've got to create excitement. The idea is already exciting. You just have to play the role of a catalyst. So we again used social media here to reach out to people, used digital advertising extensively to create a certain amount of excitement around the whole platform. It's important to have energizers, people who are role models, people who are looked up to by the community. We have Anand Mahindra, who happens to be the head of our group, has close to 500,000 followers on Twitter. He's been an active proponent of this platform. We try and engage some known names. We have a blog called rise.mahindra.com where we talk about topics that pertain to development, progress, prosperity, a better future, etc. We have some famous names writing for the blog. All this to create a sense of excitement in the community and make other people join. You cannot do it alone. If a brand thinks it's going to change the world all by itself, it's a big no-no. You have to have an ecosystem which works with you, which is aligned to your ideas, your goals. So the ecosystem is a pretty important component of creating a movement. And we were extremely lucky to have like-minded organizations and individuals who have begun the process, of partnering with. It will only grow stronger. We are learning from them all the time. And hopefully, the ecosystem will become a force to reckon with when it comes to India's future progress. Like I said, digital media as standalone will not work. It has to be backed up by on-ground events, and that's what we exactly did. We went to leading campuses, technical, medical, agricultural, business, etc., sold this idea, tried to invite people to join the movement. We participated in Twitter chats organized by the ecosystem, and there is a grand Spark the Rise finale. I must tell you that we're in the final leg of this year's round, and that's happening on the 20th of April, which will be broadcast live on the web. And we will also be having several programs that utilize digital media to amplify and take the message of the grand finale to the world outside. So that was just thought starters on the 6E framework and how social media really facilitated application of the 6E framework by doing away with the limitations of time and space. This is not, I did not do a deep dive into how we used Facebook, how we used Twitter, or the various other social media tools that are out there. It was rather an overview of what we are trying to do. Like I said, this is the last slide. It's not the concluding slide, it's the beginning slide. We're at the beginning of a long journey. We're hoping to make a very, very small dent in the universe, probably not as big as what Steve Jobs managed to do, but make a dent the Mahindra brand will. Just going to end this presentation with a small video that summarizes the first 6 months of Spark the Rise. So thank you very much, Blogworks, for having me as a speaker, and thank you very much.
We're all born with a choice to accept things as they are, or to rise to change them. So we ask people, what does rise mean to you? It became clear, rise means taking action. So how could we help people act on their aspirations? How could we help ordinary people become heroes? How could we spark the rise? We provided a platform, you made it come alive. You shared your ideas, your work, and your passion to improve India. Over 6 months, 1,346 projects were featured on Spark the Rise. 1,032 supporters lent a helping hand. 740 volunteers came forward. 473 experts gave advice. 151 funders offered their backing. 248,000 votes were cast. And 48 grants have been given to help people tackle the problems facing India today. And now, 18 finalists have been selected to take part in the grand finale. But your voice counts too. Vote to help them win a life-changing grant and to continue their rise journey.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Karthik.